Okay guys, today we got a poison DK build. Let's get right into this. So this is a build that is going to be focusing as much damage as possible on poison. It's going to be an interesting one. Now this does not only use poison, there's going to have to be some skills that we will need just so we can still maintain a good amount of DPS. We can hit easily around 80k DPS if you want to optimize a little better and maybe change out some sets or skills. I'm sure you can reach closer to 100, but 80k is more than plenty to do most of this content. Guys, let me know down in the comments if there is any build or set that you guys would like me to do, whether it's more of an RP-ish thing like this or a general idea that you have. So first up for this build, we are actually not using any monster sets. We are using a double arena weapon set. So for the first bar, we are using the Blackrose Perfected Bow. This comes from Blackrose Prison. It does not have to be perfected. You could just do it on normal and get the normal bow. You will just be missing out on the critical chance that it provides for you. So this will make it so Scatter Shot applies a DOT that deals 65% of your initial attack as poison damage every 2 seconds for 4 seconds. The duration increases if you are farther away from your target up to a maximum of 12 seconds. So with this build, we will actually be able to stay at range for the most part. There is 2 skills that will need to walk just a little bit closer to the enemy, but then you can just go right back out to long range for 24 seconds. So for the most part, you can be at range with this build. So we will be using a precise and a poisoned enchant on the front bar. For the back bar, we are using the Master's Perfected Bow. This comes from Dragonstar Arena. Once again, you don't have to have it perfected, you'll just lose out on the 100 weapon and spell damage. It will increase our weapon and spell damage by 330 against targets who are affected with our poison arrow. We are using infused with a weapon damage enchant on our back bar here. Now next up for one of our main sets, we are using Witch Knight's Defiance. This comes from the Reach. You can buy it from the Trader's Overland or you can farm it yourself. We are running 2 pieces on the helmet and shoulder and then all on the jewelry. This will give you 3 lines of weapon damage and then it will increase your weapon damage by 369. Nice. Against enemies who are inflicted with a poison damage effect. This will be pretty much everyone since we have a lot of poison going around. So we are going to be using divines across all the body and max stamina. And then for the jewelry, we are using all bloodthirsty with the weapon and spell damage enchant with a focus on stam recovery. For the next set, we are using Swamp Raider. This drops in Shadowfen, so once again, you can just buy it overland or farm it for yourself. And we're just using this all across the rest of the body pieces. This will give you crit chance, max stamina, and weapon damage, and then it will add 600 weapon damage to your poison and disease damage abilities. Once again, we're using all divines and max stamina across the body. Now there is a third option. You could use Morag Tawn. This comes from PvP and it will make it so your poison and disease damage deals an additional 10% to the targets. So if you want, you could swap out Witch Knight's Defiance for that. It may produce better numbers in some cases or maybe not. It just depends on what your setup needs. Alright, so for our stats, we have 64 attributes into stamina. We got about 15k mag, 18k health, and about 32k stamina. We're looking around 600 mag recovery and about 1400 stam recovery. Unbuffed, we're looking around 4k weapon damage and 51 crit chance, 700 penetration, and then we got about 14.5k physical and spell resist. If we look at our buff stats here, we get up to about 7100 weapon damage, 57 crit chance, and we are 3% over cap. And then for our recoveries, remember we gain recoveries every 2 seconds, so technically we have 450 mag and then about 3100 stam. Now for our consumables, for our potion, we are using a heroism pot. You don't have to use this, you could just use a tri-stat potion. We already get the major brutality and major savagery on our own, so we do not need the weapon or spell pots. And then for our food, during the combat, I have just been using the Lava Foot. However, you might want some more health, so you might want to use Dubian Cameron Throne or Artam Takeaway Broth. Now for our skills, first up we got Venom Surge. This is a free skill that targets an area of 45 meters. By clicking the like and subscribe button, you will send a surge of uncurable venom into all enemies, dealing 100% of their health as venomous damage over 20 seconds. and this effect cannot be removed. Nearby allies also gain morale, making all skills have no cost for 20 seconds. First up, from the Ardent Flame line, we are using Venomous Claw. This is the main reason why we have to go into melee range. This has a range of 7 meters if you get a certain passive. It will last for 24 seconds, however, so you don't have to do this that often. When you hit this, it'll deal upfront damage and then a massive DOT over 24 seconds. Every time it deals damage, it will increase its damage, dealing 12% more than the original hit. And then enemies hit by the initial hit are also inflicted with the poisoned status effect. Because this increases, that does mean you want it to actually run out. You don't want to cast this early because you will miss out on a massive hit. Next up, from the Ardent Flame line, we are using Noxious Breath. When you hit this, you will deal upfront damage in an AoE cone that is about 10 meters, and it will deal an additional DOT over 24 seconds. And then enemies who are hit by this also gain Major Breach, which will reduce their resistances by 6k. Since this is also the second closest to Radius Thane, we will actually be using this when we move in first. So as we get closer to the enemy to reproc our Venomous Claw, we'll hit this and then back out with the Venomous Claw. Next up, from the Fighters Guild line, we are actually using Lightweight Beast Trap. The other morph of this will do more damage, however this will allow us to stay at range. When you hit this, you will throw a trap to a location, and it will take 1.5 seconds to arm, and it will last for 20 seconds. Once it's triggered, it will deal upfront damage and then an additional DOT bleed damage over 20 seconds. The important thing is it will give you Minor Force, which will increase your critical damage by 10%. Enemies who also activate this are immobilized for 2 seconds if they're not a boss. Next up, from the bow line, we are actually using Magnum Shot. When you hit this, you will blast an enemy with an explosive arrow, dealing physical damage and then knocking them back 8 meters. So this will allow us to stay at range with enemies. However, the thing with this is it does not do poison damage normally. Because we have the Blackrose Prison Bow, this will add an additional poison DOT to this skill for free. Now the thing is, that's also based on our distance, so this ends up hitting for massive damage. When I was doing the parses, this skills dot from the Blackrose Prison Bow was the second most highest DPS source out on this build. It did about 11% of the total DPS, so it is a freaking massive DOT that you can get from this thing. Next up, our main spammable will be Lethal Arrow from the bow line. This has a massive range of 35 meters if you get the right passives, and it's very cheap. When you hit this, it does have a little bit of a cast time and it can be a little tricky to learn to weave, but once you get it, it is very easy to use. When you hit this, you will deal damage to an enemy and also apply the poison status effect. This also grants Minor Defile, which won't be as important in PvE. Next up on our front bar ultimate, we are using Flawless Dawnbreaker from the Fighters Guild line. We don't actually use this for the most part, it's here mainly for passives, however it is a good ulti if you're within melee range. When you hit this, it costs 125 ultimate and deals a cone attack in front of you. Enemies are hit for upfront damage, and then they'll deal an additional DOT for 6 seconds. And then after activating, your weapon damage will be increased for 300 for 20 seconds. Next up from the Mages Guild line, we are using Degeneration. This doesn't do any poison damage. This is going to be here just for massive help with this build to at least make sure we're not too far behind on our DPS. So hitting this will deal a decent DOT over 24 seconds, and it does cost Magicka, which is nice. We could use a little bit more mag use. Our stam is just a little too heavy, but hitting this will give us Major Brutality as well, which will increase our weapon damage by 20% for 24 seconds. So you want to keep that up at all times. Next up from the bow line, we are using Poison Injection. This will deal upfront damage and an additional DOT over 20 seconds, and it can deal up to 120% more damage to enemies under 50% health. And remember, we also have the Master's Bow, so this will be giving us an extra damage done to the target that this is applied on. Next up from the Ardent Flame line, we are using Flames of Oblivion. This is one of the other non-poison attacks. This is actually a buff that you can apply to yourself, so you can pre-buff outside of combat with this, and it costs Magicka. It will have a giant AoE around you, and every 5 seconds it will launch a fireball at 3 enemies. It deals massive flame damage, and then while slotted on either bar, we gain major savagery, increasing our crit chance by 2600. So we want to have this on our back bar since it's a lawn buff and it will actually affect us on both bars. Next up in the bow line, we are using Arrow Barrage. This is the last skill that is not poison based, but when we throw this out, it will shove out a giant AoE at range, dealing damage every second for 8 seconds after a 2-second delay. This will also be the main source on how we proc our enchant on the back bar. Next up from the bow line, we are using Acid Spray. This is optional. It can be really nice for ads. However, there's another option if you just want it for DPS on a boss. So this skill will be a conal attack over 20 meters. It'll deal pretty decent damage to all enemies in front of you, and then a pretty decent dot over 4 seconds. Now, like I said, if you have tons of ads, this is going to be really good to spam. However, another option, if you don't want to use it just because it's a short DOT, you could use Eruption from the Earth and Heart skill line. It does not do poison damage, so you will be losing out on that if you want to go more of an RP style, but this will cost you 270 magicka per second, so that's nice. It's more magicka use, which we definitely could use. It is a small radius, so that is why it's better for single target bosses versus ads. But since it's a super tiny cost, you can move this around very often and not drain your mag like you used to. This will summon a 5-meter AoE for 18 seconds that deals damage immediately. It reduces the enemy's movement speed by 70% and then deals flame damage every second. The instant eruption damage can occur once every 10 seconds as well. Another reason why you may want to run Eruption, I'm going to skip ahead here, there's going to be a passive called Mountain Blessing. This will make it so when you cast that skill, you also gain Minor Brutality to your entire group, which will increase your weapon damage by 10%. So this will help everyone with that as well. Personally, I do prefer running Eruption over Acid Spray. It is just too much of a help to the group, and it's slightly easier of a parse, but if you want to go full RP, you can totally run Acid Spray. For our back bar ultimate, currently I've been using Toxic Barrage just because it is more poison damage, and this is kind of RPing a build that can do good DPS. There is a better ultimate if you just want better overall DPS. However, it does mean you're going to be in melee and it's not poison. So Toxic Barrage costs 175 ultimate. When you hit this, you will be dealing a massive amount of poison damage over 4 seconds. And then after dealing that damage, you poison the enemy so they get a massive dot on them over 8 seconds. And you can move at full speed and are immune to all disabling effects while channeling this attack. Now, as it says, it is a channel for 4 seconds, so that means you cannot do anything else while this is happening. If you do need, you can block to cancel it. However, that means you just cancel your ultimate, so that's very expensive to do so. So while this is going on, technically that means you can't be spamming your spammable. Your spammable does do better DPS than this ultimate when it's doing the initial hit. However, after that initial hit, that DOT is a very strong DOT, so then you could spam your spammables again, and it actually ends up being slightly better DPS overall. It is kind of worth it to use Toxic Barrage. You could use the other morph if you want, if you just want to use all bow skills. However, that does not do poison damage, but it does allow you to just put down a turret and you can keep doing your stuff. If you aren't going as much with the RP and you want to just get a little bit better DPS if 80k is not good enough for you, in the Ardent Flame line you can use Standard of Might. This costs 250 ultimate and it lasts for 20 seconds, but this will deal good damage every second for 20 seconds, and it will apply Major Defile to the enemies. Standing in the area increases your damage done and reduces your damage taken by 15%. And an ally can synergize and deal massive flame damage to enemies in the area and immobilize them for 5 seconds. This is a very strong ultimate, but the issue is the radius is not big enough if you want to be at range. If you use this, it is put onto you. So that means if you're at range, it's not going to be in the enemy. So you will get a 15% increased damage done, but that DOT that it applies won't be hitting the ads unless you're in melee range. So the choice is up to you. And now for the CP. In the blue CP, we are using Wrathful Strikes, which increases our weapon damage for damaging abilities. Fighting Finesse for more critical damage. We don't really need Backstabber, we're already at crit cap. However, if you're just doing normal content, I would recommend throwing on Backstabber as well, just because you may not be hitting crit cap at all times. Thaumaturge to increase our DOT effects, and Deadly Aim to increase our single target effects. As far as the passives go in the CP, go into Extended Might. You will want Battle Mastery. This will increase your chance to apply the poison status effect, and Mighty will also help you deal more damage with our poison. In the red tree, we're using Boundless Vitality for more health, Fortified for more armor, Rejuvenation for more recoveries, and Bloody Renewal to get stand back when we kill an enemy. Next up for the passes, I'm only going to cover the passes that really affect this build. All passes will affect the build at some point, so you will want to get all of them that you can. First up, we are going to get Combustion. This will increase the damage of our burning and poison status effects by 33%. And then if you apply either of those effects, you will gain either 1k Magicka or Stamina, depending on the effect. It can occur once every 3 seconds. But they are individual of each other, so that is okay to have occasional flame stuff, so we just get Magicka back. Warmth will make it so when we deal direct damage with an Ardent Flame ability, it will reduce the movement speed of enemies by 30% for 3 seconds. Searing Heat increases the duration of several skills by 4 seconds, and then World and Ruin will increase our flame and poison attacks by 5%. In the Earth and Heart line, we will want Eternal Mountain. If you do run Eruption, this will increase the duration by 20%. Battle Roar is going to be a massive passive. This will make it so when you cast any ultimate ability, you will restore about 50 Magicka, health, and stamina for each point of the ultimate spent. So if you spend 175 ultimate on Toxic Barrage, you're going to get about 8.7k resources back on all resources. If you use the big Standard of Might, you're going to get 12.5k resources back, so that is a massive fill up and heals. It is just a massive passive to get. Mountain Blessing, if you're using anything in the Earth and Heart, you will want this as well. This will grant you and your group Minor Brutality for 20 seconds, increasing your weapon damage by 10%. And if you're in combat, you also generate 3 ultimate once every 6 seconds. In the bow line, you will want Vine Dusk Training. This will increase your damage done by 5% if you're within close range of the enemies, and if you're farther away, you will gain extra crit chance. For the most part, you're probably going to be within close range. The 12 seconds that the Scatter Shot has with the Blackrose Prison Bow, it maxes out around 12 meters, so you're going to be probably within the 15 meters because you do need to get that Venomous Claw and Noxious Breath in to make sure they're up. So we may not get the crit, but either way, it will be a massive bonus. Accuracy increases your general crit chance. Ranger reduces the cost of bow abilities by 15%. Hawkeye, anytime you deal damage with a light or heavy attack, it'll increase the damage of your bow abilities by 5% for 5 seconds, stacking up to 5 times. Hasty Retreat will grant you Major Expedition for 4 seconds after you roll dodge, and this will increase your movement speed by 30%. Since we are wearing all medium armor, we get 14% crit damage, we get 28% stam recovery, and 14% reduced cost of stam abilities, and then agility will give us 14% weapon damage. In the Fighters Guild line, Slayer will give us weapon damage for having abilities slotted, and Banish the Wicked will give us 3 ultimate anytime we kill an enemy. Since we're using Degeneration, Magic Adept will reduce the cost by 15%. Everlasting Magic will increase the duration by 20%. Magic Controller will increase our max mag and mag recovery by 2%. And Might of the Guild will give us Empower for 10 seconds, so it is nice if you do need a heavy attack. In the Undaunted line, you will want Undaunted Command. This will make it so activating a synergy restores 4% of your resources. And then Undaunted Metal will increase your max resources by 2% per type of armor that you have equipped. Currently, we are a Dark Elf. This will give us about 2k mag and stam. It'll give us 4.6k flame resist and 258 weapon damage. And then in the Alchemy line, we will want medicinal use to make our potions last 100% uptime. Okay, so now for the rotation. So as you can see, I actually have 2 blocks here for this setup. This puts us at the perfect range here, so that when I shoot them with scatter shot, as you can see, it starts at 12 seconds with that DOT. If I take a few steps forward here, right here is too close. So this is right at the edge. This is about how far you'll want to be, because as you go in with your rotation, you're going to want to hit that breath from out here. As you come running in, hit that claw when you're coming out. And then maybe spam your spammable or finish off any dots that are running off. So that's what it's going to look like when you're coming in for melee. But for the rest, you'll just be somewhere out here running around out of the ads. For the rotation, this is dynamic. You're just going to want to keep everything up. However, there's a lot of 24-second durations. So for the most part, we're actually just spamming our spammable quite often, which is very nice. The annoying thing is just having to run in. So first thing first, when we are running to enter the fight, make sure your potion's popped. You're going to want Flames of Oblivion active. On the front bar, I like to throw out the Beast Trap. That takes 1.5 seconds to arm, so that means that can be procced, swap to your back bar and hit your barrage, because that also takes about 1 second to proc. By then, the combat should have already started, so you'll light attack and throw out Degeneration to get the major brutality going. And then on the front bar, since we just moved in here, I'll hit the claws, backing out, hit the breath, and then now that we're back here at the max range, you can hit them with scatter shot. So now they've got the 12-second DOT on them. By then, we can do the poison injects. Now we're doing more damage to them because of the master's bow. And then eruption finally, to get some more flame DOT out. So now at this point, all of our DOTs are going. You might need to reapply Beast Trap by this time and your barrage. And then now you can just spam your lethal arrow. Now, if you're wanting to use Toxic Barrage, what I recommend is make sure all of your dots are up. So if they're all up here, once you get everything up, then you can hit it. You got 4 seconds where it's not going to be doing anything. And then swap to the front bar, and then you can start finishing off with lethal arrow or refilling any dots that are going to be falling off. Now, the cool thing with the Toxic Barrage is because it's a channel, you can actually queue your skills. So I'm going to hit Toxic Barrage. Currently, that will be the only skill I have active. While I'm queuing it, about 1 second or 2 before it ends, I'm going to hit my Flames of Oblivion. And you will see this, it automatically goes, and I'll tell you when I hit it. Flames of Oblivion right now, it automatically just proc that for me. So that's how you know, if you pre-queue something, that'll let you know when your channel ends, because if you're just gonna sit and wait and guess when it ends, you might be a little late. So you want to queue something, anything, you'll see that different animation of whatever skill you queued. Then you know you can swap back to the front bar, spam lethal arrow, or stay on the back, finish off your dots, whatever you need to do. Now I'll just do a little demonstration here for a little bit, show you guys what the rotation will look like. I do like to keep my cursor just about level with their feet. You don't really need to move it when you go in for the melee. I'll show you next time we come around. We're getting a little close for the melee. So we're running in, hit the breath, hit the claws, I run out while still spamming my spammable or finishing off the dots you need to. But you see there, I didn't need to move my cursor, so that meant I am back now aiming right at his feet from this range. So I am letting everything land where it should be. Now, my food actually ran out, so that is why we're getting a little low there. And then you go back in for melee. And maybe you can swap back. You might need to be a little tricky with your hands, but I think I have the wrong potion slotted. I just queued Flames of Oblivion, so now I know it just ended, nice and easy like that. Do remember that Lethal Arrow has about a 1 second delay after you've hit the skill, so that does mean if you are wanting to hit a certain skill or swap to the back bar, if you try and do it too early, you actually won't do it, and you might end up just pressing Lethal Arrow again, depending on what you're doing, so be careful with that. Now that time wasn't that great. I did end up having a few skills that were not ready, so that was a pretty bad thing. Now, like I said, you could do Acid Spray if you'd like. It will mean more poison damage, so that'll help with the RP of this build, but it does really complicate the rotation, and you will miss out on the minor brutality for the eruption skill. So honestly, it's kind of hard not to have eruption. Okay, that's a good time, so I'm gonna channel eruption. Okay, so we're good. Now we know when to bar swap. So in times like this where nothing was really needed to be reset, I do prefer to just hit eruption again, because it only costs like 200 magicka versus anything else that might be a couple K resources. All right, so for that time we hit for 80k. As you can see, this is the Blackrose Prison Bow. It is doing so much damage, and if you include the actual magnum shot as well, 2.6, so you're looking around 13 to 14% of the damage done, which is just under our spammable, so that is a massive amount of damage. Flames of Oblivion is also pretty up there. Eruption doesn't do as much damage. We're looking around 5.3k DPS. But we look at a different fight where I was using Acid Spray. As you can see, we did get 5.5k DPS with Acid Spray, so that is just about the same as Eruption. However, Acid Spray does allow for more of an AoE at a long distance. As you can see, Eruption is just this circle here, whereas Acid Spray is poison, so it helps with your RP, but also it is actually a pretty good distance. I'm pretty sure you can hit from here, so it's a pretty good distance at an AoE that you're hitting with. Yeah, so I can still hit him from this angle, so it's a pretty good AoE at this distance. So it will be good for ads to spam that out. However, you will be missing out on your minor brutality, so the choice is up to you on that. As far as the outfit, I had a comment a few videos ago where someone was actually wanting to see what the natural sets actually look like in the game. So I am going to start doing that now, see how you guys like that. So this is actually the natural sets that you can see here. Guys, hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe if you guys want to see more of this content. If there's any other builds or ideas that you guys have, please let me know down in the comments. I've been a little bit busy in real life, so I'm sorry about the slower amount of videos, but I am still working on it. I have not given up on this, so hope you guys have a good day, and I will see you guys next time.